Now, before we spread these cheeks and really get into this video, I just want to say that I highly recommend you watch the whole video before forming any opinions. And no matter what, I do not want anybody going and harassing the other person involved in this fiasco. I'm not like a certain other YouTuber who's currently infamous for using his following to terrorize others. I don't condone that behavior. I don't care if I got screwed on purpose or on accident. That's not the image I want myself nor my following to have. However, criticizing a large corporation for their unintelligible business practices and decisions is a different story. It's sad, but the only time corporations seem to actually care about fixing the flaws within their product that screw over the people that use it is if there's enough public backlash because of it. So after a lot of thought, I figured I'd speak about what happened to me a couple months ago, on the very marginal chance that it actually gets seen and maybe even makes a difference. So that hopefully the same thing that happened to me maybe doesn't happen to somebody else. Now this little story has a lot of wacky twists and turns, which is again why I recommend you watch the whole thing. And spoiler warning, to this day, I still don't fully understand or know why or how this all happened, due to factors like American banking, confidentiality, and security protocol policies. That's a word I was looking for. Due to American banking, confidentiality, and security policies, the other party's lack of caring or concern, and also because of Cash App's severe lack of communication, competency, or care for the people that actually use their platform. Whether this was the result of purposely malicious acts or just a wild string of incompetency from an individual, his bank, and Cash App, it ended up with me losing both a $1,000 Balisong and the $900 I sold it for to pay for my dog's medical bills. Now, I'm not usually one to play the victim role, okay? I'm not that kind of cracker. And telling this story isn't really me trying to play that. I do realize that if I chose to not do business with this specific person, there's a good chance that this stuff probably wouldn't have happened. But I did choose to do business with this person. But as you'll soon hear, I had no control over the alleged situation that resulted in me getting this money taken away from me. And I was left all but powerless to try and get it back. With that being said, my name is Den BMX. And I like to make goofy little videos on all my hobbies, mainly BMX, guitar, and what we'll be focusing on today, Balisongs, or butterfly knives for all you normies out there. Now, a while back, I had made a video about how I had already gotten scammed out of $200 before trying to get a Balisong on the used market using Zelle. And Zelle's response was essentially, "It ain't my fucking problem. Oh, you got scammed? No more $200? And after that situation, I became pretty apprehensive about using apps like Cash App or Zelle and using the used Balisong marketplace because it largely relies on the honor system. But shortly after getting my ass ate, it seemed like the universe wanted to give me some good karma, because a few short days later, I woke up to the news that my dumbass somehow ended up winning a Jeff Dumas EX-10, which in the Balisong world is known as a grail. It's like the luxury top-of-the-line thing in your niche, like the Gibson or Fender custom shop for the guitar world, or like a Rolls Royce for the car world, or like a Rolex if you like wasting money, or like Supreme clothes if you're a fucking tool. Anyway, I won like a top-of-the-line Balisong that retails for about $1,000. And that thing was some whole-ass art, I tell you what. I felt like a 1%er holding that thing. I made a review and demo of it that you can go check out here. Actually, I think it's over there, I think. I don't know. I'll leave the link somewhere. Now, while it was a gorgeous and crazy Balisong, it wasn't my personal grail. And I planned on selling it and using that money in order to acquire the grail Balisong that I personally really wanted. But my dog Kane ended up having different plans because he's one sick puppy. I mean that very literally. He got sick. And he started throwing up a lot and getting very dehydrated. There was a pretty scary morning where we woke up to him throwing up blood and then flopping over. And it took a few overnight stays at the hospital, but he did end up starting to get better and started holding fluids and food again. So the good news is my boy got better. But the bad news is the animal healthcare system is somehow even more fucked up than the American healthcare system, and we were left with some pretty hefty bills. So I made the decision to put my EX-10 up for sale to help pay for those bills. And luckily I was able to sell it within a day or two for about 900 bones to this guy named Sam. Now here's where I may have goofed a little bit by not vetting this person's credibility and seeing if he had anyone else in the community that could vouch for him, which is usually what you're supposed to do in the used market, even though I did it for the guy that scammed me before and I still got fucked. But in my post selling the knife, I made it very clear why I was selling it. I was just kind of hoping no one would be that much of a shithead to prey on somebody in my situation, and I was just trying to sell it really fast, so I put my trust in this guy. And for a while there, I really thought I lucked out. He cash apped me, I sent him the money, I used the money to help pay for the bills. Bob's your uncle. I thought the story ended there. But about a month later, I got an email from Cash App saying that since Sam filed a dispute, they were going to take $900 out of the card that was linked to my Cash App account. Now, this wasn't a warning. They had already done it by the time they sent the email. They didn't even have the common courtesy to use lube. So after shitting my pants and then immediately going through the 5 stages of grief in a matter of seconds, I messaged Sam to see if I could figure out what was going on. Although, maybe not in the kindest way possible. After a bit of haranguing, he finally answered one of my calls, and his response was laughing at me and claiming he didn't know who I was. Okay, he also called me the N-word, which is a bit surprising coming from a 20-something-year-old skinny white boy. Actually, I guess that's not that surprising nowadays. But regardless, after that he hung up and then blocked me on Instagram. So after that, I decided my best course of action was to just try and resolve this by myself. So I called my bank and I reported it as fraud, and they were like, oh shit. And then they canceled my card and then looked into it. And then a few minutes later, they said they actually can't do anything about it since it was a fraud dispute filed by his bank, which I thought was very weird. I didn't commit fraud, so I was very curious of how his bank came to the conclusion that I did. My bank recommended that I try and either resolve this with Sam or see if Cash App could do anything. So after that, I tried contacting Cash App. Tried being the key word there. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to get in contact with Cash App before, but if you have, you probably know that their customer support system is about as helpful and gives about as much of a shit as Travis Scott did at Astroworld. Right now, YouTube is getting quite a bit of flack for their lack of communication. If you think YouTube's communication is bad with its users, you should try getting in contact with Cash App. YouTube could win a Nobel Peace Prize for their communication compared to Cash App's. Now, Cash App has a customer support number, but I don't think there's a single soul on planet Earth that has ever called that number and had their call actually be answered. So your only real course of action is to either email them or use their support chat feature in their app. Both lead you to essentially the same system, and they claim it's an actual human being on the other side of the phone, but I'm genuinely not so sure. If it is an actual, genuine, living, breathing human being on the other side, all they're really allowed to do is just copy and paste the same few scripted lines over and over again. But I emailed them first with the hopes that they could somehow fix this situation, but if Zelle's lack of accountability for all the sketchy shit that happens on their app told me anything, it's that probably wasn't going to happen. But I was at least hoping I could get some insight as to how or why this was actually happening. Like if I was actually getting scammed or if it was all just a big misunderstanding. At least that's what I was hoping I would get out of this. But after a few back and forths, they stopped the conversation entirely and said that I wasn't allowed to know anything. They also weren't allowed to tell me why they weren't allowed to tell me anything. So then I decided to try the support chat because I love pain apparently. After talking to about 4 different totally real human beings, trying to explain the situation differently each time, or at least trying to get an answer as to why they were able to take the money from my account without even warning me, every chat ended the same way. That I'm not allowed to know anything, that I should either contact my bank or try and resolve this with Sam, and that I should go fuck myself. So cool, my bank can't do anything, Sam blocked me, and Cash App was about as helpful as a dead turtle over something that happened on their platform. So then I decided to try and message Sam again on my backup Instagram account, this time much more calmly and professionally saying that he's left me no choice but to threaten legal action. And he thought I was kidding, but at the time, I kinda wasn't. He said that I was tweaking and that he didn't refund the money. So I sent him a screenshot of the email confirmation saying that he did. And only then did he actually want to start talking to me. And he apologized for being a fart. He said that he thought I was trying to somehow scam him, I guess. And then he claimed that he was hit with fraud and that he filed a dispute with his bank and that his bank must have somehow tagged our transaction as fraud too, along with whatever fraud actually happened to him. And since it was an actual fraud dispute by his bank, that would explain why Cash App was allowed to reach deep into my ass and assault my bank account without my consent. And it would also explain why my bank wasn't allowed to do anything about it except sit there in the corner and watch like a little gimp. But I'm still a little confused as to how our transaction got hit as fraud too. Because when I report fraud to my bank, they will sit there with me and go over every single transaction so that I can tag the individual ones that are fraud. The only way that I can imagine our transaction got hit with fraud too is if the fraud actually hit him through his Cash App account and his bank just decided to label every Cash App transaction as fraud, which I find kind of hard to believe that they wouldn't go through every individual one and would just lump them all together. But it's well within the realm of possibility that they actually did go through every single transaction and he purposely labeled mine as fraud too. Whatever the reason, at least now I knew why my wallet was being molested, and there was actually just a little sliver of hope that I could possibly get this money back. Sam said he would contact his bank and see if he could get it fixed. So I waited. And waited. And waited. So after about a day or two, I messaged him and I said, hey, what's going on? And then hours later, he got back to me saying he called his bank and that they had already processed the transaction and that there was nothing he could do about it. So I was like, okay, what are you going to do about that? And his response was essentially... So then I asked him if he tried contacting Cash App, and he said he had, but they fucking suck, which is, a big shocker there. And then he told me one of the most mind-blowing things I've ever heard in my life. He said that because of the fraud claims, Cash App had deleted his account. And since they deleted his account, Cash App now will not tell him if the money that they owe him is either going to get deposited into his bank account or if it's just going to be stuck in Cash App limbo trying to get into his account they deleted until, I don't know, the heat death of the universe. Is that not some of the most whack shit you've ever heard in your entire life? You got hit with fraud, so we're going to delete your account. But since we deleted your account, we're not going to let you know if that money is going to go back into your bank account or if it's just going to get stuck in our system trying to be sent to the account that doesn't exist anymore. The money, of course, that isn't even yours. So I asked him if he's going to call his bank so that they can figure out where this money is going to go, and I got no response. So you see, while this kid said he would help me, he wasn't really addressing the situation with very much urgency. So I started looking around to see if I could find the answer to his issue. And this is where I found the one person that works for Cash App that actually seems to give an iota of a shit about the people who use Cash App. And it was one of the moderators for the Cash App subreddit. So I explained this whole thunder cunt of a situation to him and asked him if he knew whether or not this money was going to be stuck in Cash App or not. And he said no, it shouldn't. He said if it was a fraud claim by his bank, Cash App is required to deposit that money into the original bank account. So I passed this information on to Sam, and his response was, I haven't gotten the money yet, but if I ever do, I'll let you know. Trust me, bro. So I said, hey man, why don't you call your bank and see if they can actually strong arm Cash App into sending this money faster if they haven't already. Because I feel like if it's a fraud claim filed by your bank, they aren't going to be too privy to Cash App taking their sweet time about it, and is going to want that money back pretty quick. But I haven't heard anything back from Sam since then, and I check in on him every now and then. The only response that I get is that it says that he's read my message. If you're still not grasping just how fucked and out of my control this situation is, let me try and simplify it. I had almost a whole rack taken from my bank account because of fraud that happened to somebody else. Allegedly. And the only way that I could possibly get this money back is if this kid, who isn't the most enthusiastic to help me out, actually gets off his ass and does what he needs to do to make sure he gets this money back. And if he actually gets this money back, I have to put my full faith in him not being a greedy piece of shit and that he'll actually return the money to me. Considering this happened all the way back in April, I'm pretty sure either Cash App is being a real bitch about sending that money back and is taking their sweet ass time, which I feel like his bank wouldn't really let slide, or what I feel like what most likely happened is that they actually did return the money to his bank account, but Sam just decided to keep it for himself. But I will actually never know, because I have no real way to check on the status of this situation. The only info I have is on Cash App, where it still says the money's being refunded, and when I click on that, it says the money will be refunded by April 20th, 2022. But to this day, it still says it's refunding, so who the fuck knows if it's actually happened or not. All I know is that I'm still missing that $900, and I also don't have my EX-10 anymore. Now, this was a very shitty thing to happen, and I'm glad it didn't happen while Kane was still sick, because then I would have just lost money that I actually really needed at the time. And as much as I wish that this didn't happen to me, I'm at least glad that it happened to someone who wasn't absolutely financially devastated by this. Like, don't get me wrong, this still fucked up a lot of financial stuff for me, but I know for a lot of people, getting that much money ripped out of their account immediately with no warning at all would be catastrophic, especially when there's virtually nothing you can do about it except put all your faith into this kid who honestly couldn't give any less of a shit. Based off his level of communication and helpfulness, Sam clearly couldn't be burdened by this situation that he's responsible for putting me in, if his claims are valid. Which is sad because, again, this would have been a really bad situation for a lot of other people. But I guess he clearly doesn't care to think about stuff like that. So yeah, big shout out to Sam. If I was a more cynical person, I would pretty much say that he probably stole my money. But even if he didn't, and this process is still somehow ongoing and they're still trying to get that money back, he also wasn't very helpful with trying to get this money back. So thanks, bro. I appreciate it. And if this did actually go down the way he said it did, shout out to his bank for not properly knowing how to file fraud claims and getting me screwed by this mess. And then, of course, a big, huge shout out to Cash App for their dog shit excuse for a customer support system and for their decision making about this whole situation. Thank you for making this as difficult as possible. I understand why I really wasn't allowed to know anything, because it was a dispute with his bank, so it's his bank account and his finances and everything, which is fine. But if you're gonna delete his account and then not let him know what's going on with that situation, what the fuck is that shit? But, shout out to the one guy that works for Cash App on Reddit. At least he actually cared. He should get a raise, because I guarantee you he doesn't get paid enough. In fact, he should actually go work for a company that gives more of a shit about people that use its product. But anyway, that's the story of how I got my ass ate and lost both $900 and a $1,000 Balisong. I hope you enjoyed this epic tale of me getting shit on. I'm not really expecting any charity out of this, so I'm not gonna make like a GoFundMe to try and get this money back or anything. But I will say that there is that new super thanks button down there that YouTube has where you can leave a tip if you'd really want to. I'm not expecting anybody to, but if you would like to leave a tip or maybe even join the channel membership, that would be pretty cool. But yeah, I'm not expecting to like make this money back through like charity or anything. That's not really like why I made this video. I really made this video to explain this situation and why it happened, because I don't really want this to happen to anybody else, and I don't think it should be allowed to happen to anybody else. Like, yeah, banking apps and like banks and stuff can only do so much to fight fraud, but I know that they could do a lot more for somebody that was in a situation like mine. And just the sheer incompetence and lack of caring from these big corporations over a situation like mine kind of blows my mind. But anyway, I'm done telling my story. That's gonna wrap up this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, or at least learned something. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't think you should enjoy this story necessarily, but thank you for watching. We'll say that. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy, or you're glad you watched this video, I'd really appreciate it if you let me know and help support the engagement on this video so it actually gets seen more by leaving a like. That's the most helpful thing. Leaving a comment also really helps. Sharing the video around, of course, will always help. And then, of course, if you enjoy the content that I put out, make sure you're subscribed. I know there's a lot of people who regularly watch my content that aren't subscribed, so make sure you're subscribed. Hit the bell notification so you can be notified whenever I put new videos out. And if you really want to help support myself and this channel, you can always join the channel membership. The lowest tier starts at like $3, and you get access to exclusive members-only videos and other perks depending on which tier you choose, like the shout-outs that these guys are getting. And then there's also the new super thanks button where you can leave a tip if you feel so inclined out of the kindness of your heart. But yeah, again, not really expecting any of that stuff. I just wanted to get this story out. Thank you guys so much for watching. More regular Den BMX content coming very soon. But yeah, that's gonna wrap up this video. Thanks for watching. Now fuck off.